without further ado, what's up, Aditi?
Now,
it's time for family therapy with
there
Aditi.
we go. Aditi, do you have a very long middle name, or do you have a regular Americanized middle name?
No, actually, my middle name is Kinkhabwala.
Oh, really?
Wow.
When I got married, I had to change my name.
What?
I pushed Kinkhabwala to the middle, so I'm Aditi Kinkhabwala Guinness.
No, but what's your birth last name?
Middle name.
Or, wait a second. No.
My birth middle name is my father's name because that's Indian tradition.
Oh,
that you
okay.
always get,
Yeah.
that the babies always have the father's first name as their middle name.
Ah.
Yeah,
okay, I didn't
my
know
wife
that.
had to do the
Which,
same thing.
interestingly enough, that was my husband's. Oh, I'm sorry, G, but that was my husband's tradition too. My husband's middle name is his father's name.
Oh.
So I don't know that that's only Indian. That might just be tradition across several different cultures.
I don't know.
My wife did the exact same thing, and she changed her middle name to her maiden name.
Middle name to
Her maiden name is now her middle name.
Got you. I see what you said.
Right.
Yeah, my wife did
So
the same thing.
so Jason, what's her middle name now?
Zali. That was her maiden name. Good Italian.
Zali.
Did she have a middle name that
And
she
what did
got
you do
rid
with
of?
your kids? Did you give Zali to any of your
No.
kids?
No, they're Lloyd through and through. They're Lloyd men. They're Lloyd men.
They're all Lloyd.
But her original, she was named after her grandmother, and she booted the name out. Got rid of Grandma's name.
Grandma got out.
Grandma got out, so she's now. But we don't hyphenate or anything like that. They are Lloyd children.
Yeah, I mean, we don't
very
either,
sternly.
but how's this one? This probably says a lot that you'll either approve or disapprove of. Nico, my first, his middle name is Kinkhabwala because at the time my brother hadn't had a son, my cousin hadn't had any children. I had no idea if the Kinkhabwala name would go on.
Right.
And my argument was that your middle name is just an initial, so let it mean something. But here's what's really funny is that Nico tells everybody that his name is Nico Kinkhabwala Guinness.
That's a mouthful.
When the janitor, so one day I was at multicultural night at Fairview Elementary School, and the janitor pulls me aside, or the school custodian pulls me aside, and he says, your son runs everything at recess. He's the one that's the quarterback and the coach and the this, and this. And after a little while, I was like, I wonder why he knows he's my kid, because the custodian knows me as Aditi Kinkhabwala, but Nico should be known as Nico Guinness in school. So why would anybody put the two together? Mm-hmm. And I asked Nico, I said, how'd the custodian know that you're my son? And he goes, Mommy, I tell everybody that my name is Nico Kinkhabwala.
Wow.
Wow.
Good
That's
for
awesome.
I was like, don't tell your daddy that. Don't tell your daddy that.
And thus it comes back to the husband again. Here we go.
Sorry. All right, anyway,
it's
moving
funny.
on. No, you know what, guys? To be perfectly honest, I was just in the doctor's office for an hour and a half with my 3-year-old. So if any news broke in the last hour and a half, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to tell Mikey, hey, give me 3 more minutes so I can just do the cliff notes to see if I missed anything major.
No, well, I don't think anything's happened in the last hour. Nothing major.
Nope.
So, but let's talk about what happened yesterday. I'm curious, your take. We actually haven't even talked about this yet, but of the two quarterbacks that signed yesterday, Derek Carr signs with New Orleans 4 for $150, and Geno re-signs with Seattle 3 for $105. If you were those teams, or if you were a fan of those two teams, which of those contracts would you be happier with? As a fan.
I think that's so hard because each one is the right fit where they are. And I think that, the one thing that we've learned in covering the NFL is that so much of these contract numbers are fake numbers.
That's true.
Like, it's what does the agent want out there to look like it is something? And this is something that I know for a fact about, for instance, David Njoku's contract. The way that it was billed and publicly put out there is not what it actually is if you get into the nitty gritty. And so the people that leak contract numbers are always agents. Agents look better if those numbers seem inflated in some way. That's completely true. Separate of that, I think that Geno Smith gave the Seahawks so much more than that fan base expected a year ago. every quarterback is better a second year in a system than in a first year. You can only expect more. You have to feel good about that. And you guys know what a big fan of Derek Carr's I am and how motivated he is to have a monster year right now and go someplace where he feels that he is appreciated. And he is, bar none, one of the best humans and best leaders I've been around in the National Football League. Everything that he has put up with the Raiders organization, the undying loyalty he gave that organization, the way that he was willing to go down with the ship with that organization, the Saints are very, very fortunate to have him. Very fortunate.
By the way, neither of those guys has ever won a playoff game.
Right, but I don't think that Derek Carr was in ever any sort of position to do so. You know, 2 years ago, it was sort of a surprise with Rich Bisaccia after the mess of that season. And P.S., it was Derek Carr who helped hold that team together when there was the John Gruden mess and the Henry Ruggs mess and all of that. I think that Gino hasn't really had a chance.
He hasn't played.
Right?
Yeah.
So just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen.
That's true. Aditi, what would you do? We just played a little musical chairs about will really sign, cut, trade somebody. If you were the Baltimore Ravens and you were in charge per se, would you sign Lamar Jackson to the guaranteed contract that he wants? Would you trade him for draft picks or capital, or would you franchise tag him?
I think right now the Ravens absolutely have to franchise tag him for multiple reasons. And so much of this is also a psychological game, right? Like, Lamar Jackson is the type of player that you want to make sure knows that you have unyielding faith in him and you are totally loyal to him. And I think nothing could be more detrimental than if word got out or word got to him that the Ravens were kicking the tires on trading him, which I'm not saying they are or that I've heard has happened. I just think that there's sort of a bigger picture here, a bigger game here. But from the beginning, I've said to you, I think that this is just sort of the most unusual, fascinating, if you want to use that word, contract negotiation that I've ever witnessed in any sort of way. And I have no question that Eric DaCosta has wanted it done for a long time, that he's putting everything in to get it done. But that's why the decision today, whether it's the exclusive franchise tag or the non-exclusive, is very interesting to me.
Yeah, it is.
It seems like it would be easy to say, oh, well, it should be the exclusive. You're all in on this player. You believe in this player. You've designed your offense around this player, all of that. The non-exclusive saves money. I don't think that this is what this is about. You know, Steve Bisciotti doesn't make decisions. The Ravens owner doesn't make decisions. How do I save a couple dollars? It's how do I win? But remember, Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent. So if it's the non-exclusive, how are other teams even necessarily getting a hold of him to negotiate another deal? That's just always sort of been the story since he even came out of college, that it was a little bit of a more difficult negotiation than with, let's say, your average player. But we also shouldn't speak in generalities. It's not like every agentless player is hard to negotiate with. And Eric DaCosta just got a deal done with Roquan Smith, who doesn't have an agent.
Aditi, the Lamar Jackson thing, there's a lot about his situation that I find, I guess, irritating. There's a lot of things that irritate me, obviously, but this in particular, because when Lamar first came in the league, Bill Polian famously made the idiotic statement that he was a wide receiver or whatever. I don't know if it was tight end or wide receiver. And it seems like ever since then, anybody that has anything to say about Lamar Jackson that's not he's the greatest quarterback ever is admonished. Like, you can't be critical of him at all. It's absurd to me. Okay? I like watching Lamar Jackson play. He is one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch play. The Ravens are in a tricky spot because since his MVP year, he hasn't been that good. Let's face the reality of it. There's some people that just can't admit that. I don't understand what's going on. It's only him. There's not a single other player in this situation.
I mean, it's very, very polarizing, right? Like, you're either all or nothing on Lamar Jackson. And it's almost
crazy.
like if you're in a middle spot like you are, or you sound to be to me, you can call him a great player who hasn't necessarily played as great as he has in the past in
Right.
recent history. I don't understand why that gets pigeonholed as like, oh my gosh, well then you are this. It's very
almost
interesting.
like
You're right.
Whenever when other quarterbacks are negotiating with teams, there's not ever this attack on the team as if they're evil here. The Ravens, and I hate the Ravens, but they're being painted as like they're this major slight against Lamar. I wouldn't want to guarantee him more than Deshaun Watson's been guaranteed when he's been hurt the last 2 years and hasn't played that well. I don't want to trade him either because his upside is through the roof and we've seen what he can be at his best. I'm not sure if he can play at that level consistently. And so, honestly, I'm not sure what to do. But I can't blame the Ravens for not wanting to guarantee every last dollar to him. So I don't think they're evil. I think they're in a tricky spot and they're not sure what to do. It's tough, and they got to make a decision.
And it's not only the Ravens. Look, Russell Wilson got a big, huge, fat contract and didn't get every single penny guaranteed. I mean, that's sort of the way Kyler Murray didn't get every single penny guaranteed. It's not as if the Ravens are the outlier in the business model.
That's
it's
true.
Actually the Browns and Deshaun Watson that are
That's
the
correct.
outlier.
Yes.
And sure, Lamar Jackson is allowed to go chase whatever he possibly
Absolutely.
But if that market doesn't exist for a fully guaranteed $230 million contract or a fully guaranteed $250 million contract, I mean,
I wonder.
It's hard. It's hard to sit here. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but I wonder if the reason the Ravens might go with the non-exclusive franchise tag is because they don't think anybody else is guaranteeing him all this money either. And they're going to say to him, look, teams could have signed you. Now, they got to give up 2 first-round picks if the Ravens don't match it. But these teams could, like, if you want to trade for Lamar, you got to give up 2 first-round picks anyway. So, like, These other teams are not going to pay you, so maybe we'll franchise you, and now you'll be more reasonable next year. Or as I'm not saying he's not being reasonable, but as they see it, you'll be more reasonable.
But see, that's what's so interesting too, right? Like if you have an agent, your agent can quietly assess what the market actually is out there. So this could be, the Ravens can say to Lamar until they're blue in the face, you're going to have a difficult time getting another team to give you $250 million. Nobody else is telling him that because he doesn't have an agent that's calling other teams to find out if that actually exists.
And maybe some team will give him that.
The non-exclusive tag is that in theory, the Ravens are letting him see the market. And see that the market as he envisions it may not actually be materializing. I don't know. I mean, I don't envy Eric DeCosta at all. No. And I've said this over and over. I know that you hate the Ravens as a fan, but I think you can even agree with me. The way that they go about their business, I mean, that's about as classy of an organization as you can get. From top down, from ownership to the way that Ozzie Newsome has stayed aboard and worked so well with Eric DeCosta, the way that Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh, I mean, heck, they live in the same neighborhood. The friendships, the loyalty, the allegiance, the way that they treat their players. I remember when Al Villanueva was considering an offer from them, and I think you guys know this, that we're extremely good friends. I had said to him, just as much as you think the Steelers and Mike Tomlin are player-friendly, the Ravens are too. In a different way. John Harbaugh is a player's coach in a different way than Mike Tomlin is, but no lesser. And it's the truth. I mean, they are a great organization. They run their business the way you'd want a business to be run. I feel terrible that there are people that are painting them, people on the outside, painting them as the bad guys in this. I don't think there's a bad guy. No. I just think that there's not a meeting of the minds here, and it's really hard.
Okay, so let's play this out a little bit. And this isn't what I wanted to ask you. I do want to get to one other topic with you, but let's play out the non-exclusive tag on Lamar. If a team were to sign him, you're getting him for a hell of a lot less than what the Broncos gave up for Russ and what the Browns gave up trade-wise for Deshaun, and yet it allows Baltimore to recoup 2 number ones for him. It kind of sounds like I think Lamar's played his last snap for Baltimore, me personally, just what I think. But it sounds like the non-exclusive tag is the way that everyone wins on this. What am I not seeing?
I mean, I can't disagree with you, Jason. I'm almost like afraid to publicly say that because of Adam's point that you're suddenly the bad guy.
You are.
I'm not saying that Lamar. Look, Lamar can be the franchise quarterback in Baltimore for the next decade and lead them to 9 Super Bowls. Like, I'm not saying that's out of the realm of possibility. But to what you're saying, it does seem like a smart play. Because part of me, and I'll quote Mike Tomlin again, you want volunteers, not hostages.
Yeah.
And if Lamar doesn't want to be there, then okay, right? Like, if Lamar doesn't trust that you're trying to do the best that you reasonably can, then I don't know. I'm like worried that Mikey's going to snip this off and put it on social and I'll be attacked.
Yep.
I will not. I promise. I promise.
That's why I'm like cutting off my sentences midstream so that no one gets them, Jason. But I think you raise a very, very good point. And this is part of the fun of being an armchair GM. And again, why I don't actually envy Eric DaCosta, because you do fear. Let's say you do the non-exclusive, and let's say you do say to Lamar, go test the market, go see if that $250 million guaranteed market exists and materializes. But what if Lamar takes that personally, and that sets him in a bad place?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then he ends up coming back to you, and again, all of these, again, I'm not saying this is who Lamar is, but let's say he has a little nick and he's like, well, these guys didn't fully believe in me, so maybe I'll take this weekend off. Again, not saying he's going to do that, not saying that that's his personality, but these are all the permutations that a general manager has to think of when making this move. And I mean, it's fun for us, Jason, to sit here and do that, but that's because he's not on our roster.
That's
in the fall.
absolutely right. And that sort of segues into what I originally wanted to ask you. 4 teams are going after Deshaun last year: Carolina, New Orleans, Cleveland, Atlanta. Those were the 4 finalists. I'm wondering, I mean, 2 of those teams are still looking for a quarterback, and Atlanta and Lamar make a lot of sense, if you ask me. I know that's been out there for a while. But New Orleans lands on Derek Carr. Cleveland has Deshaun. Carolina and Atlanta are still shopping. I don't know that I have a bold statement to make. It's just I'm fascinated to continue to watch those 4 teams as they progress and try and find a quarterback solution if they go to the draft, if they chase Lamar. Where do you think those 2 stand today with Deshaun in Cleveland, Derek in New Orleans? What is the best fit, or I guess who do you think is happiest, and what happens with Carolina, Atlanta as they continue the search?
I mean, well, I'm fascinated to see, I keep using that word, but I am intrigued to see what Carolina does, and I love that staff. I mean, if I'm a quarterback, I would love to go play for Josh McCown and Frank Reich. Done.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh McCown is, and I actually said this to Josh last week, in all my years of covering the NFL, there were 2 players that really, really stood out. Like, this guy's going to be a coach one day. DeMeco Ryans and Josh McCown. And I am so excited that Josh is now in this position and doing it this way, kind of building up. And, you know, we and I talked about it. It doesn't have to take a long time. In 6 years, DeMeco went from an assistant, a defensive assistant, essentially a quality control guy, to a head coach. And that's because of his knowledge of the game, his otherworldly leadership, his ability to connect. I think Josh is very similar in that way. And I think that if you have your ears open, that's a guy you can learn so much from. And I think Frank Reich is just one of the good humans in the game and is always going to put a quarterback in a position to succeed. So I love that pairing. I love the idea of someone going to play for them. We know this. It's what's around you. What's the best group? And as great as you may be, and Derek Carr knows this firsthand because of his brother's experience, right? Like, if you have a crap offensive line, if you don't have any receivers to throw to, if you don't, all of those things play into it. Right now, I think that the Browns are in the best stead because you have Deshaun Watson clearly extremely happy to work with Kevin Stefanski. That seems to be a very, very good, open flow of conversation, collaboration, if you want to call it. We know that Kevin isn't a guy that has an ego about what he calls or runs, that Deshaun, with each passing day, is getting more vocal and saying, this is what I like, I don't like, etc. You love that line and you love that run game. And both of those things, that line and that run game, helps set up a quarterback for success. Would you like to see more production from the wide receiver spot as a whole? Sure. But I also think that that's a really good setup. And I mean, it's hard. You know, if Carolina and Atlanta get rookies, how can you say that they're in better shape than Deshaun Watson?
Yeah.
So heading into the season, even without knowing who's going to Carolina or Atlanta, I mean, especially since Aaron Rodgers isn't rumored to be going to either spot. Do you guys think he ends up in New Jersey, by the way? Do you think he really ends up the Jet?
God, I don't know where else is there.
He had conversations today.
I hope he ends up with a long walk off a short pier.
Seriously, you're not an Aaron Rodgers person at all, Adam.
I just think he's just such a drama queen. It's so annoying. I mean, he's a great player, or he was. I don't know how good is he.
We share a birthday. P.S. We share a birthday, so there might be something in our sun signs that are the same.
Are you a drama queen too? I don't think of you as a drama queen.
I mean, I tend to not think so.
No,
but
I don't think so.
There may be others who disagree. G's being a little. Gee, I sense your silence.
I said I was going by what your son said. He said, "Listen, he's like, how do you know? That's your mom." Well, I do. That is my mother. I've watched her operate around here. No, I will say this, Aditi. Is DeAndre Hopkins washed up? Because every time they bring his name up, like people's like, I'm cool on him. Is he washed? Can he help the Browns?
I don't think he's going to end up there. I can't tell you that because, again, I think so much has to do with fit, G, right? And I'm not a huge fan of the quarterback play that we saw in Arizona. That doesn't mean that I'm not a fan of Kyler Murray's. That doesn't mean that I don't think something more can be gotten out of Kyler Murray. But I think that the DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson reunion is a very, very, very big long shot. And another thing that's very difficult as someone who is, on the other side of her career, very difficult to acknowledge. But the truth is, it's far easier to get immediate production from a young wide receiver than perhaps other positions. Mm-hmm. So rather than taking a flyer on a guy who you even have questions about whether he's on the backside of his career, if he is or is not washed up, why not chase a young, fresh talent who's got young, fresh legs, who's got something to prove, and who, quite frankly, costs less and counts less against the cap. And I wouldn't say that for every position. You guys have heard me say, sometimes you need to pay for that older veteran because of everything else he brings to the ecosystem of the locker room and to the professionalism you've tried to build. I mean, you've heard me say that Jarvis Landry was worth it, even if he couldn't run the same way that he ran 4 years ago. But I think at a position like that, a game-breaking receiver, you might have more luck looking for a young guy.
I think the concern is the last 2 times the Browns have drafted a receiver 3rd round or higher, it's been Anthony Schwartz and what's his name, David Bell.
Yeah.
So I mean, David Bell was a rookie. Maybe he'll turn it around. Schwartz is already shot. You got to cut him. But
I'm not willing to give up on Bell because Bell does indeed have a great catch radius. He's really, really smart. He's got very dependable, reliable hands. Schwartz, we always knew was a flyer, right?
Yeah,
he never had great hands.
No,
never. I mean, he's a sprinter. So, and it's almost like Darius Hayward-Bay. You get really infatuated with the speed. You get so excited. Oh my gosh, this is otherworldly speed that can get behind everyone, which Schwartz can. But as much as you work on catching the ball, I think that there just has to be something innate. An Antonio Brown can catch 100 balls off the jugs machine every day and get better at catching, but that's because of the way that he started.
Right. People get
Anthony
so
Schwartz
enamored.
Can catch 100 balls off the jugs machine every day, but there's only so much better he's going to get.
People get enamored with the speed or the athletic ability. To me, if the guy didn't show it in college, I don't know. Like, we talk about John Ross. We mentioned him yesterday. Bengals drafted him top 10. Everybody's getting all hot and bothered for this Anthony Richardson now. Like, well, where was he in college? Why wasn't he better in college? I mean, maybe he's going to be great. I don't know. But, Aditi, we were just put under the gun last half hour. Mikey made a new game. It was our version, the game blank, marry, kill.
You could say
FMK.
FMK, you know that game?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so we played a version called Keep, Cut, Trade with and it was a really good. We had like the superstars of Cleveland in different sports. So I'm not going to ask you the ones that Mikey asked, but let me ask you if you have to choose, okay? Keep, trade, cut. Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Joel Bitonio. What are you doing?
Keep.
No, you can't.
That's not the game. No.
That's not the game.
That's not
You've
it.
got to keep one, trade one, and cut one. That's the,
What kind of game is this?
A damn good one.
That's what we just had to do
had to
for
do
half
it.
an hour. We all cut Nick Chubb.
We infuriated all of
We
Cleveland
pissed
for a
off the
half
whole
hour.
audience because we had to cut Nick Chubb to keep Donovan Mitchell
Oh my
and Jose
God, he's
Ramirez.
my keep. I'd keep Nick.
Well, we
I
had
would
it
keep
different. We had it different with Cavs and Guardians.
Ours was the best Guardians player, the best Cavs player, and Nick Chubb.
Adam's making it all Browns players for you.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
making it
Yeah,
all Browns.
no.
All right, well, give
I
me your
would,
choice. You can do that one, or you can do me, G, and Bull.
Okay,
'Cause
I
I
would
got-
keep Nick.
You keep
God, this
Nick?
hurts. I'd keep Nick.
Yeah. Wow, that's a bold move.
I'd trade
Bold move.
Myles because I think Myles has greater trade value than Joel
Right.
does.
And you cut
And I'd cut
Antonio.
Joel. Yeah.
That
But I'd cut Joel and I'd hire him back as my assistant O-line coach.
There you go.
So he'd keep everybody in line. So that's what I would do.
All right,
I'd
good.
get the most value for Myles.
Yeah.
That's why I'd trade him. I could retain Joel in a capacity where he brings me so much of what I count on and need from Joel. And I would keep Nick Chubb because that's what I think of Nick Chubb.
Okay.
You should have made her pick between Tomlin and Harbaugh.
Oh, yeah.
Stefanski, Tomlin, Harbaugh. Cut, keep, trade.
Oh.
Wait, so who are the three? Stefanski, Tomlin, and Harbaugh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
That's a good one,
That's
G.
a very good one.
We'll play this game with some
All right.
AFC
Well,
North people
I'd trade
next
Mike
time.
Tomlin because he's the one I'd get the most for. The entire country is enamored of Mike Tomlin. Everybody outside of the city of Pittsburgh thinks Mike Tomlin is the biggest genius that ever lived, and players think they want to play for him. So I'm getting the most in return for Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Trade him, therefore.
Yeah.
I keep John because
Of course, yeah.
that I think he's a top 5 coach. He's won a Super Bowl, and unfortunately, as much as I personally like Kevin, I'd have to cut him.
He could
But
be
John
bring him back
would
as
probably
coordinator.
hire him onto his staff. He could be his quarterback.
In fairness, Kevin would cut
Whoever's
Kevin.
quarterback.
Kevin would cut
He would.
What-
If you give Kevin that question, Kevin would cut
He
himself.
got himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got to be realistic
Yeah.
about it. That's
But you'd have to sit here, like, part of the whole thing with trade is what can you get in return?
Yep.
What can you net in return? Which was all the way going back to your non-exclusive. If you lose Lamar Jackson, at least you get 2 first-round picks.
Right.
All right, Aditi. Ian Rappaport. No, I'm just
This one, Mikey is definitely putting online.
That would blow up Aditi. So
Hey,
if you want to answer it,
we
we'll
need that.
definitely do it.
We need that.
Do you want me to ask you one like that or no? I won't put you on that spot if you don't want me to. No, I didn't think so. All right, seriously, getting back to wide receiver. Let's bring it back there. I know you said go with the young guy, and I'm fine with them drafting a guy, but I would like them to bring in a veteran. I think Hopkins is too expensive.
Phone's dead.
What-
You know, it used to be.
But I like the idea of Brandon Cooks because he has the experience with Watson like Hopkins. He's a little younger and less expensive. What do you think about Brandon Cooks? And he has the speed element. He may not be as fast as he was, but he has the speed element that the Browns could use. What do you think about that?
I do. I like him. I do. All of this depends on what the price is. Like,
Sure.
if you ask me, where am I spending more money, or where am I committing my attention to first and then seeing what I have left, it's on that defensive front. You need to shore up that defensive front. You need to give Jim Schwartz what he needs. And we saw it. We saw it with the Eagles. We saw it with the Chiefs. Everything starts up front. The teams that build from the line of scrimmage out are the ones that have the most success. And right now, the Browns' defensive line needs a lot of help. Or maybe a lot isn't fair, but see what that takes.
Right.
And then see what you've got left.
But we were saying yesterday, we feel like, the Browns went all in on Watson. They got to be in a way salary cap be damned, and they got to fill. It can't be a wide receiver or D tackle. You got to fill both.
It's not an either or, but it's who are you spending more money on? Who are you devoting more of the cap to? Who is more of a priority? You got to lock
Okay,
up that
sure.
defensive line first, and then you figure out the wide receiver.
Which is why I don't understand this Jesse Bates thing. They just spent $12 million on his safety. How'd that work out? Why would you go and do that
Yeah.
again? Safety of all positions feels like a spot you
I
could
doubt
fill with
they're
a
doing
third or
that.
fourth round draft pick.
I don't like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know that I'm seeing that happen, although I will tell you this, Jesse Bates is one of my favorite players
He's
in the
awesome.
league.
And he's better
Just
than John
that-
Johnson. But I
Okay,
wouldn't do it.
great.
That
But I
good
don't.
of a leader, that good of a guy. I mean, but I love John Johnson too. But Jesse is just a different Jesse is one of my favorite in the league.
I just don't know
Across
that it's worth.
multiple ways.
when
Not
you-
just his play, not just his leadership, not just his humanity, all of it, every which way.
And if the Browns had competent NFL caliber defensive tackles and an edge rusher opposite Miles, I'd say great, go
Yeah,
spend
it
$14
just
million
doesn't
on a
make sense to
safety.
spend
Yeah.
that money there.
But for this defense and where they're at, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah,
agree.
again, it's
Yeah.
let's see what you could do with your defensive front and then have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it does, to your point, it does feel a little bit like a luxury. You know, to me, another wide receiver, when you've got Amari Cooper, when you have these young wide receivers that you have no reason to give up on yet, Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Bell, and the availability of young talent out there, I just think that that's a little bit more of a luxury until you shore up that defensive front. That's got to be your
agree.
priority.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And
Aditi,
you
we saw
didn't
yesterday.
part ways with Joe Woods and bring in Jim Schwartz if you didn't feel that way.
Right.
We saw yesterday, Aditi, that Carr got 150 million, Gino got 105. What do you think Daniel Jones ends up getting when this is all resolved? Is he going to get
I
more
thought you were
than
going to
that?
ask me what Aditi Kinkhabwala is getting. And I was like, well.
Not enough's the answer to that, Aditi.
Yeah,
Good
I don't
answer.
know. That's a tough one because it really does feel right now like the league has this upper level elite group, and then there is kind of this like under elite group, and the question still remains, can you really actually win with them?
Right.
You know, and we like to think, and I've said this, you know, play great defense, run the ball well, and have a quarterback who doesn't make mistakes. And I think you can win, that you don't need a quarterback who goes out there and wins for you every week.
I think, but it's much hard. I don't agree with you personally right now. I don't think we've discussed this. I don't think you could win that way anymore. I think you could, but not anymore.
I that's what I was getting to, Adam,
Right,
is
okay,
that
go ahead.
I don't know. I've said that for
Yeah.
a while. I don't know that I really, truly believe that anymore. I think that on any given Sunday, Deshaun Watson can put a team on his shoulders and win a game for you. I think on any given Sunday, Joe Burrow can put a team on his shoulders and win a game for you. I just don't know that Daniel Jones is that person.
No.
But the market is what the market is,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you'd have to think that his pay is somewhere in between there, as you just said. But again, this is where he's better than a rookie. He's better than someone you don't know. He gave you this in year one of Daboll, and how much do you believe that he can give you in year two of Daboll? That's a hard one. And I do think where I was going with that, Adam, is I don't necessarily believe that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe. I think you can get to a certain spot with a quarterback who doesn't make mistakes. I think you can get somewhere. But I think when it comes down to it in the conference championship, in the Super Bowl, you need a guy that can put the team on his back. And you also need, it's not even in those moments, it's just you need that swagger about you. Joe Burrow makes everybody else think that they're going to win every single weekend because of Joe Burrow. Trevor Lawrence, as the season went on, the reason that Trevor Lawrence was able to, staring at that big hole, whatever, I don't even remember, it was 28-0, whatever. That was a growth from Trevor Lawrence over the course of the year. And you need that. You need
They're gonna have Calvin Ridley
to feel
now.
like my quarterback can carry me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're
I don't
right.
know that everyone feels that way about Daniel Jones,
And you
but
think about it, like the Niners are the perfect example, right? The Niners,
Yeah.
if you say who's the most talented team in the NFL, not including quarterback, I think most people would say the Niners. I mean, they are loaded all over the
Right.
field, and yet they can never get over the top because they haven't had a good quarterback. And I feel like they're the only team that's got a chance.
elite. They haven't had an elite. I mean, they've
No.
had serviceable, good, like
Right.
nice little story. And it almost makes you wonder, would Purdy have been enough if Purdy hadn't gotten
I
hurt,
doubt
right?
it.
Like, could he
Yeah.
have been enough right there?
Right.
But Yeah,
we'll
I
never know.
don't, which all goes back to the whole Lamar Jackson and how much is Lamar Jackson worth?
Yep.
Because despite all these other things, is in that, or he has proven to be, not in the last 2 years, but he has proven to be in that otherworldly level.
Aditi, great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for, blindsiding me with these crazy games,
Hey, listen,
Mikey.
we got blindsided by
that's
you're
what
part of
you
the team.
got.
You're part of the team. You got to deal with it
You on the
sometimes.
cast.